So, welcome. Thank you for joining us. As we said earlier, if you could switch your cameras on and mute your mics, that would be great. If you haven't met before, I'm Beck. I'm the marketing manager from Call of the Wild, joined by my esteemed colleague, Barry. So I'll do a proper introduction for him. Sorry, a few more people coming in shortly, but if you're not aware of us, we're Call of the Wild. We deliver experiential learning and people development programs based in the Brecon Beacons. And we like to use our amazing surrounds to create some unforgettable experiences that have a lasting impact in the workplace. So Barry is our, sorry, letting a few more people in. Barry's our head of professional practice, been at Call of the Wild for over 12 years and has a wealth of experience behind him. Was previously Chief Exec of the Welsh Government Centre for Excellence in Leadership Skills and was the first ever recipient of the Directors Award from the IOD. So there's so much more to his CV, but hopefully that gives you a taste. On the admin side, Barry will obviously be leading the session, but if you've got any questions, then please do use the chat function, which I'll be monitoring. And just let a few more people in, sorry. And at the end, if you wouldn't mind, I'll share a feedback form. If you wouldn't mind completing that, that would be really appreciated. That helps us, form what we do going forward. And that's it from me. So
Beck, we've lost your audio, Beck.
Sorry, okay. It's over to you anyway.
All right, thanks, Beck. Morning, all. One other thing, when Beck said, if you've got a question to ask, go on the chat, or just use the hands up function, or just say something. If you've got a point to make, please, you are absolutely welcome to join in with this. Otherwise, it might be a bit boring for you just sitting there listening, but whatever you want to do, please do it. Okay, we're going to try something slightly differently this morning in this webinar than we've done before, in that I'm not going to run the PowerPoint because this PowerPoint is largely, this PowerPoint is largely informative, and so I thought, well, we'll just talk around the topic. Okay, so if everybody's ready, those of you who haven't got your cameras on, if you wouldn't mind, if they're working or you're not in your car, if you want to pop the camera on the screen. The only reason for that is, well, just so I can see that everybody's here, really. The worst thing you can do is have no cameras on because you wonder whether anybody's there. All right, so let's go. So we're going to look at having difficult conversations. We're going to look at when and where you have them. We're going to look at the sort of how they happen, the process of them. But the first thing we're going to do is just have a look at some of the origins of difficult conversations. And the first one has got to be conflict. And I know we're talking about conflict in the workplace, but look, come on, our social being, our social selves, we have conflict there as well. And there's no difference between conflict in the workplace and conflict out of the workplace. It's just that they sometimes bounce off each other, but there's no real difference. So we'll just look at it as conflict in the round, okay? And leaders, if you're in a leadership or a management position, you're going to be dealing with conflict regularly. It's something that happens to you regularly. And in a way, so it should. There should be conflict in the workplace and in your lives. It should be there. It gives you an edge. It keeps you productive. Now, I don't mean conflict as in you're having big arguments with people, or even worse, you're having a fight with something. No, not that. This conflict is you saying, I think we'll do this, and someone else saying, or we could do that. Now, in its purest form, that's conflict. Okay, and that's the conflict you may well be surrounded by. So that's okay. I mean, the worst bit of conflict is unresolved conflict. If you can't get a resolution to it, then there's every chance that there will be social consequences to that. People will be unhappy. People could go home from work having been in some sort of conflict that isn't resolved. They go home from work, they at home, because they've come home unhappy, they will get uninformed but well-intentioned advice about, you want to go in there and tell them tomorrow, oh, that's not fair, why is it always you? This is a second. They'll get all that kind of advice. This comes from the right place, but it definitely informs how they come back to work the next day, because they might have gone home a little bit fed up. They come in the next day really wound up because they've had lots and lots and lots of little bits of advice and questions and all of that they just seem to get wound up with. So beware of that. Beware of unresolved conflict, because it can be quite dangerous and have long-term effect. Okay. I mean, standard question, are there common elements, factors in workplace conflict? Well, the most common one is people, isn't it? People are at the start, at the centre of most conflict, and they're also at the heart of difficult conversations as well. So let's start now looking at those difficult conversations and think about maybe what makes them difficult. Loads of things. You loads and loads of things, and you know more than I probably about this, but so many different things make conversations difficult. Of course, it can be the other person you're having a conversation with. There are people, let's not hide this, there are people we just cannot have anything other than a difficult conversation with, because you just don't get on, or you just don't see eye to eye, or you have completely different views on things. I live in Caerphilly. We've just spent the last fortnight having difficult conversations every day, just about the election. No matter which side you're on, and I won't be saying which side I was on, but no matter which side you're on, people had hugely different views. Good friends having a difficult conversation about a topic. And these are not people that we've just talked about, where you just can't get on, where no matter what you talk about, you can't get on. These are people who normally see eye to eye, are like-minded. But because of the topic, this conversation becomes difficult. In some cases, so difficult that it causes a fracture of a relationship that's been steady for years. So we've got to try and learn more about difficult conversations. I mean, of course, there's another thing. So we've had is the people, we've had is the topic. The other one is the one that started off okay and turned difficult sometime during the lifetime of the conversation. If you're in a leadership position and you're in that where it starts off okay, it's fine, and then gets difficult, you got to have your wits about you. You got to be looking for the when did it start getting a little bit edgy, and that's when you're looking for those non-verbal signals. People just get their tone of their voice changes, maybe their posture changes, but you are constantly watching in conversations. And the one great thing about that is you can't turn off your awareness of other people's, well, we could say body language, couldn't we? You can't turn that off. It's there all the time. And you're watching and you're looking. The idea is, though, that you recognize a change, you recognize the possibility that things are changing. And if you can, you do something about it. Can you de-escalate? Do you want to de-escalate? Once it's in the other direction, do you want to push it back, or are you going to say, right, well, that's the way we've got to deal with it then? Everyone on this call who's in a leadership position will have had a difficult conversation. You're bound to have. It's part of your world. Think back and wonder whether, was I getting ready for a difficult conversation all the time? Or was this a good one that suddenly went wrong? I mean, anybody that does appraisals, if any of you still do appraisals, anyone who does appraisals, some appraisals can start off okay, and then something's brought up So the topic slightly changes and the conversation becomes more difficult all the time. And it's getting more and more difficult till in the end, what's the phrase? Sometimes you agree to differ. Sadly, agreeing to differ doesn't sort anything out, but at least it stops that interface. So you just got to be aware that difficult conversations are around you all the time. I mean, if we now accept that difficult conversations are everywhere and that they are influenced by the players or the topic, then there have to be things we can take into account to allow us to control the conversation. There has to be. Okay, so let's look at the where and the when. Shall we? How important is where you have this difficult conversation? Look, I know sometimes you've got no control over that, because some difficult conversations drop on you from the sky. You don't see it coming. You don't see them coming. You don't even know what's going to happen, and bang, there it is. You've got to deal with it. You've got to sort something out. You've got to try and get this going. You haven't got time to plan. So you have an option there, don't you? Sometimes of saying, we'll continue this later. Right, we've got to have this conversation. I'm not getting out of it, but this is not the time or place for it. Let's do this a bit later. And that might allow you time to get your ducks in a row. If there's evidence required in this kind of difficult conversation, collect the evidence. If you just need to think, crikey, I don't know where that came from, I need to find out more about that, then do that. But we all know sometimes you can't do that. If you've got staff, I mean, we deal in Call of the Wild, we work with a very, very large retailer, a national retailer who is very well thought of. And we do this with their managers, and they're saying sometimes a staff issue has to be dealt with there and then, or a customer issue has to be dealt with there and then. So we've got no choice on the when, or sometimes even the where. It's going to happen there and then. All right. But let's just look at the things that possibly you have got a bit of control over. And the first one is the where. Okay. The setting for the conversation. Now, this is non-verbal. This is part of non-verbal communication. You deciding where to have this tough conversation you're going to have. Okay, you deciding where it is gives you a little bit of control, because as a leader, you need that element of control in this. Because ultimately what happens is going to be down to the way you conduct yourself and allow the conversation to go. So you need that bit of control. And by deciding on where, then that gives you that control. And the use of space in non-verbal communication is called proxemics. And proxemics is quite a sizable topic. Because proxemics, when we talk about the use of space, the first thing we'll look at is the space between you and the person you're having the conversation with. In the UK, a metre apart we feel is comfortable and appropriate. It's a metre. We will allow people to come closer depending on how much we like them or how much we trust them, care about them, how intimate we are with each other. You can allow people to get closer and closer, okay? But normally we'd go for about a metre. Not so elsewhere in the world. Do you ever go on holiday somewhere and you think, why are they standing so close to me? I don't like people this close. There's a great film of a British diplomat at the Saudi embassy being chased around the place by one of the Saudis who wanted to talk to him, and the Saudi wanted to be this close, and the British diplomat wanted him a metre away, till in the end what he did was he held his glass with his soft drink, obviously, so it was a Saudi. He held his glass in front of him as a sort of a barrier to stop the Saudi getting any closer. That was the only way he could do it, to try and keep some sort of what he decided was decency in the conversation. So there's proxemics as far as interpersonal proxemics is concerned. Think about how uncomfortable you get when people stand too close. You know, I mean, I'm not advocating that you all now go out to the pub, but as a non-drinker, I love going to the pub and watching people's interactions. I'm watching people swaying where someone who's getting too close and they lean in. So what this person does is leans back a bit. And that happens all the time. It's only when they sway in and they don't move back that there's some sort of non-verbal connection going on there. Normally, we want that meter. Okay? So when you're looking at where to have this difficult conversation, then it's got to be somewhere that you can be a meter apart. It's no good in the corner of a shop floor or in a factory or in the office, tucked in the corner by the filing cabinets or whatever. It's no good if you're so instantly it's not working. You need to make sure you can get that meter apart. And then there's a bit more to proxemics. Well, there would be, wouldn't there? It can't possibly be that easy. It's about how we manage the geography of where we're having the conversation. Okay, it is possibly rearranging furniture. If you're going to have a difficult conversation in a room, is it set up properly? If this difficult conversation, because not all difficult conversations is a telling off, or I'm not happy about what's been going. Some difficult conversations is passing on bad news. It's not all about you haven't performed, we got to, or I didn't like what you did then. It isn't. Some of the most difficult conversations I've had in my career have been sitting someone down and giving them shockingly bad news. You know, if you've ever done that was ridiculously called the death call, if you've ever had to do that, believe me, you've got to get the proxemics right then. And so it's not always a telling off, but let's look at the geography of the space. First of all, let's look at the chairs. Where are the chairs? Where are you going to sit? In my last job that Beck said about in Leadership and Management Wales, my office was a fairly big place, big space, and I had my desk and a chair the other side of the desk. I had part of the office was set out with a couple of comfy chairs and coffee table and lamp and that kind of thing, which was known as the comfies. And then there was a big table where we all sat and had meetings and things, right? The staff knew, coming into my office, depending on where I showed them to sit, sort of told them a little bit about what this conversation was about. If I said have a seat, it's the other side of the desk to me, this is formal. So what's this about? This is formal, isn't it? I've got the desk, I'm going to sit, I'm in my chair, you're in. I'm just going to make sure that we understand. If I say, come and have a sit on the comfies, then this could just be a chat about how's it going, everything all right, that kind of thing. Or it could be the bad news conversation. And if they went to the other place, it was a planning, it was a much more sort of work-based thing. All right. There are leaders, few and far between, thank goodness, but there are leaders who manipulate the geography of the room to help them with the nature of the conversation. There are leaders who will make sure that their chair is raised and the chair opposite them is lower, because they think that puts them in a position of power. Because look at me, look how tall I am, and look how insignificant and small you are. You've got to look up to me. The fact that they probably don't ever look up to them is neither here nor there. If they can make them look up to them, then okay, they will. I've seen others sit with the window behind them. Why? Because they're backlit. For goodness sake, they're backlit. They look like they've got an aura around them. I think people are going to walk in and go, ooh, look at you. Look how important you are. Blimey, that's good. And look how unimportant I am, sitting in this slightly uncomfortable lower chair. Please don't do that. I know none of you, I'm sure none of you would. Some of you might have experienced it, being made to be uncomfortable already just to keep you. I mean, like people with uncomfortable seats. So in the end, you can't sit there for about more than 2 minutes without wriggling about a bit. It's ridiculous. It's just the manipulation of the space. I mean, yeah, it can be seen to be a power thing. You can do that if you want to. You don't need to do that. If you're a proper leader, if you're a proper leader manager, you don't need any of these stupid props to be good at your job. You're much better off sitting equal to someone. All right, face to face, okay, across the desk. That's all right. That's not about power. That's about, this is what we're going to talk about. But you don't need to fiddle with power strings. It's no point in it. Okay. So there's proxemics. I mean, I get what you could do is think about where you have these conversations, because it will help if you get the geography right. If you get the setting and the site right, it will help with the conversation. It really will. It also means that when it comes to concluding, you've already got it partway there. When you're trying to get this conflict or whatever it is, this difficult conversation to come to an end, it's a natural end. Look, sometimes the other person in the conversation wants it to go on longer. Sometimes you want it to go on longer. That's your judgment. There are times when you've got to go, look, we're not getting anywhere here. Shall we, as we said, agree to differ? Sometimes you can't agree to differ, because this conversation is about something that has to be sorted out. The other person has to know your point of view, has to know why the conversation's taking place. The one that we use regularly in training when we're doing sessions on difficult conversations is the leader who has been told by another member of their team that another member of the team has a body odor problem. Yeah, I know. Right. And they then say, can you have a word, please? Because it falls to you as the leader to do so. Most leaders who've been in post for a while may well have faced this. I have in my career once or twice. I don't mean someone's taken me to one side and said, listen, we need to talk about your body odor. I mean, I'm the one who had to say to someone, we got to talk about this, There's a difficult conversation. It's not about performance. It's not about it's so deeply personal that you've got to plan that. And think about the where you can have this, the proxemics of it. What are you going to do? And then there's the subtleties to it. If you ever have this conversation, think about the other person. Think about how they must be feeling, and this is just what I did. And I'm not saying it's the right thing, but I changed everything around to me. I noticed this problem. I wasn't going to say someone came and told me. Doesn't that make it worse? Imagine being told that and thinking that everyone's talking about me. So I said, I've noticed. And I thought I'd have a quick chat before anybody mentions it to me, in case they would. I did it that way, and it worked out okay. I mean, it was awful. It was awful. And some of you may well have done it. May well have had that conversation with someone else, and it's tough. But choosing the right time, choosing the right place was really important. Which brings me on to then the when. When do you have difficult conversations? And the use of time in communication in general, but specifically with difficult conversations, the use of time is called chronemics. We need to be chronemically able and aware, when to have this conversation. And of course, this only works if this is not one that's dropped on you. because the chronemics is taken out of your hands then, unless you do, as I said, and go, we need to talk about this, come and see me in 10 minutes or whatever. That gives you a chance to maybe get the space settled, whatever. But chronemically, if you can control it, do. Think about the case we've just talked about, the personal hygiene case. When would you do that? Would you choose for first thing in the morning? Would you wait till the end of the day? If you choose first thing in the morning, are you going to allow them to go home? And how are you going to explain to them that they can go home and no one will notice? So you concoct a story saying that they've had to go home for the day. So see, I hope you can see how important the chronemics of this is. You know, it's got to be done at the right time. Also, if you're dealing with an incident, chronemically, you can't leave it too long. It weakens your case by talking to people about something that happened a couple of days ago, because they may well come back with, I don't know, I can't remember. Did I? And you go, well, yeah, I'm sure. And it weakens it, doesn't it? So you've got to deal with it. You've got to get the chronemics right, but you've also, you can't leave it too long. Do you go straight in and do it? It might depend on the incident, on the case. What we do know is that historically, chronemics has been used as a weapon. Chronemics has been used as a power tool. In the old days, if you ever had a meeting with a bank manager, the chances of you seeing that bank manager at the time your meeting was set were remote. You always had to wait. Always. They were always late. Terribly busy, always late. They can fit you in. Now, why was that, do you think? I think my cynical hat says it's because they want you to know that they're so busy, much busier than letting you come take up some of their time. So they've managed to find you a little slot between other things that they are more busier doing. All right, it's changed now. It's changed now since the banking crash, and since the general mistrust of bankers became widespread. Now they don't make you wait; they see you on time now. It's all changed now because that power game they played never worked. The worst of it was when they combined chronemics with proxemics. When they made you sit somewhere waiting to go and see them, that you could actually see through the window and see that it didn't look like they were doing anything. You could see they weren't busy. And then quarter of an hour later, they'd call you in. Sorry, I'm up to my neck with it, whatever. It was putting you somewhere that you could see, and it was making you wait. It was. This is how insignificant you are. But if you are gonna set meetings, not just difficult conversation meetings, but meetings, remember the time, okay? If you say you're gonna have a meeting at 2:00, have a meeting at 2:00. If you're stuck and something's happened and look, things come up. Everyone's busy. Things come up. Then, and you're going to run late, tell them you're running late. Don't just make them wait. Tell them you're running late. There's a delay. Because if you do that, it sort of keeps them informed. And that's all we want, really, is to be informed of what's going on. The absolute worst I've ever seen was when I was working in Uganda, of all places, in a university in Uganda called Makerere University in Kampala. And I was in a meeting with the head of school, a lovely bloke, lovely man called George. I was in with George when there was this mouse-like knock on the door. So you couldn't really hear, but George heard it, did his usual, upped his voice, pumped his voice, so in comes this terrified-looking student who said, well, can I have a minute with you? And George said, sit down. So he sat down, this young lad, and George and I carried on the conversation. I'm uncomfortable now. I don't want this to happen. I want George to recognise this young chap, sort it out, and we can get on with it. So I said, George, do you want it? No, he said, you can wait. Look at this as a power thing, isn't it? I'm much more important. He can wait until I decide when to talk to him. In the end, George said, I think we'll go for lunch. So I said, well, do you want to sit here? No. We go for lunch, we come back. He's still sitting there, this lad, still looking terrified. Sat down, we started the meeting, and I went, George, I can't do this. Sorry, I can't. I want you to, if you don't mind, deal with this young chap. And George said, begrudgingly, said, oh, go on, what do you want? And this lad said, I wondered whether it'd be okay if I handed in my assignment tomorrow instead of today, because, and he tried to give an excuse, and George just said, yes, that's fine, go. Now, there's no better example of time being used as power as that. He could have done that straight away. The boy didn't need to sit there for that, but it was chronemically powerful. And you know, I mean, I had no right to say to George, probably no need for that, George. But you know, I just thought I'm never going to do that. I don't ever want to put anybody in that position. So chronemics then, chronemics can be about making someone wait. They want to come up to see you, and you make them wait until you're ready to speak. You could be typing away on your computer, on your keyboard, whatever. You know what happens. Come on. Someone comes up and says, can I have a chat? Now, I know people who don't even recognize they're there. Just carry on. Then stop, sigh, always a nice loud sigh, just to let them know. Oh, what? Yeah, what? All of that is saying, what do you want, you nuisance? I'm busy, you know what? All those unspoken passed on there then. And then they talk and you go, yeah, okay, we'll deal it. Much better to get your chronemic head on, and when they come up and say, can I have a chat? Stop what you're doing and go, yeah, sure. If you want to wait for a sec, I'm just going to finish this. Wait there, I'll be with you now. Or if you want to go back, I'll come and find you as soon as I finish this. See the difference? How that will make them feel? You know, people who are writing, someone comes in and they don't even look up. Come on. It's all power, isn't it? I'm so important to what I'm writing, and you can wait until I've finished. So chronemically, let's try and get as close as we can to an instant response. Even if the instant response is, hang on, that's better than no response for the person who's come over to you. And then, I mean, we've talked about being late for meetings, and that includes getting to them for a meeting as well. Not them coming to you. If you're running late, let them know you're running late. It could be anything from traffic to a meeting that overran. I mean, anybody who works remotely as a leader, you're probably got a diary that goes meeting. Now, chronemically, that's unhealthy. Chronemically, you need a gap between the meetings. But since we've been working remotely, of course, the feeling is you can have meetings that run one after another. You haven't got to go looking for the meeting room, number one. You haven't got to book a meeting room, number two. So you can just fill people's diaries. It's unhealthy. Chronemically, it's unhealthy, especially if some of those meetings are difficult. Because you believe me, if you've got 6 meetings a day, 7 meetings a day, some of you might go, I wish I only had 7, but whatever, that number of meetings a day, it's only the first 2 or 3 that you are absolutely fully engaged with. You need a space between them. You need to be chronemically healthy. You need that space. And if you've got an hour meeting, then try and only do 45 minutes. Have a gap either side, back and front of it, so you can at least wash your brain out from that meeting before you start the next one. It's so important, you know. What about answering emails? Because you can have a difficult conversation over email. Anyone here class themselves as an email ninja? Because they're about, aren't they? You put an email out and ping, in it comes the reply. And you go, wow, I can't type that fast. How did you do that? But in it comes, and it gets you, and you think, oh, and suddenly you're involved in a difficult conversation non-verbally. A written, difficult conversation. How do we make our point? on an email? Well, we do capitals, don't we? I mean, capital is like raising your voice slightly. But I want to do more than that. I'm going to raise my voice more than slightly. I'm going to shout. So what I do is I do capitals, but I make them bold. Have that in your email. Go on. What do you think of that? And then if you want to shout your head off, you do capitals bold and you stick a couple of exclamation marks after it. All right. And it can go from there. So you have to be careful when you're doing non-verbal difficult conversations, because there's no tone, is there, in the written word? And every one of us, I'm sure, could put our hand up and say, I sent out an email or a message of some description that actually wasn't quite what I meant. It could have been taken the wrong way, but I didn't notice until it was gone and someone took it the wrong way. There's a trick to reduce the number of times that happens, if you like, and that is to read the email before you sent it. I know you're busy, okay? I know you want to fire this off because you want to let them know that you're not waiting around for you're going to sort them out. Look, take a moment, please, and read it before you send it. But don't read it to yourself. Don't look at the screen and read it to yourself. Why? Because you are reading it to someone who knows what you meant. You won't pick it up if you read it to yourself. This is where you've got to be. You've got to become that slightly odd person in the office who seems to be talking to themselves, because you need to read the email out aloud. And weirdly, and I don't know how this happens, I just know it does. Weirdly, if there's a problem in the grammar, in the text, in the inference, you'll pick it up as you're saying it. I don't know. I'd love to know why. If I was younger, I'd probably do a bit of research into it, but I'm too old for that now. But it is interesting that saying it out loud, you pick up what's wrong. And it cuts down the number of errors by a really, really worthwhile percentage. Okay? But there's more to these non-verbal things as well. How quickly do you answer emails? Do you answer them straight away? Or are there some people who answer straight away and other people, well, they can wait, kind of? And what are you saying about the ones who wait? Are they, in your mind, less important? And it's okay for that to be the case. It may well be that there are people you don't answer straight away because others are more important. Just make sure that their importance is not purely based in hierarchy. I've got to answer them because this, hang on a minute, Robert Griffiths. Yeah, you've got to answer them because they're the boss. I got to do with that. So, Beck, could you? I can't read messages and talk. It's like it's me doing two things at once. And I can't do it. A message something came in from Rob Lloyd Griffiths. Could you just tell me what the message was? Sorry, guys.
It's okay. He has said you mentioned that sometimes tough chats drop from the sky when at least one side might not be expecting it. I'm sure you will come to this, but I'm wondering do you have any hints or tips on how to restore a relationship after difficult conversations?
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, well, slowly is the one thing that you need to do, because restoring a conversation that's gone south is quite difficult. The first thing you need is the will from both parties for it to be restored. Both people must be willing to restore this. If it's such a serious rift that it's never going to be what it was before, then you've got to accept that, and you then have to redefine the parameters of your relationship. And that was a bit poncy. You've got to redefine how you get on, and maybe you have to accept that it's not going to be what it was. You're just going to have to accept that it's different. There are times when you might make an apology if you've got something wrong, or if you overreacted. it might be that you're going to have to say, look, I'm really sorry. This is what happened. This is why I reacted in the way I did. I'm really sorry about that. It was just one of those things. You might have to do that, but sadly, an awful lot of quite serious, difficult conversations never ever go back to where they were before. There will always be some difficulty. That it just hangs there. You may well get on, in inverted commas, but you won't get on like you used to, and you've just got to sort of accept that. Really, it may mean that you, in some cases, you need to be the bigger person. It could well be that you think this was completely out of hand and there was no need for it, but for the greater good, I'll sort of say, okay, well, let's never mind. It's in the past. It's happened. We can't do anything about what happened in the past, so we'll go on. And you need to be the one that maybe says, well, okay, we'll put it on the back burner, but it's difficult, really, really difficult. But we all know these things happen because it's life, isn't it? You know. Thanks for that, Rob. The chronemics as well, to get slightly more challenging, an organisation can be polychronic or monochronic. I know it was bound to get a little bit like this, wasn't it, at some time or other. Polychronic culture is one that allows employees to multitask and to socialize heavily. There's an intermixing of people. It's okay that everybody is chatting sometimes. You look around and I myself ran a polychronic organization. I quite liked it, to hear the interplay between people. I liked it. I thought, yeah, they got time, they can do that. It was never, oh, have you got time to have a chat about the traitors or something? I wouldn't have minded. That's okay. I think that was fine. But I knew that there were monochronic cultures where employees focus on one task at a time and only on that task, completing them in an assigned order of tasks. It's a very, very rigid organization, okay? And time is not meant to be wasted in one of them. And leaders will say, come on, unless you've got time for this. That never sat comfortably with me, really. I wanted people to be more relaxed, to allow themselves the luxury of not being under the cosh all the time, of being allowed to have a chat. So chronomically, we would just say, oh, that's okay. We also never had rigid breaks. It was never, it's 10 o'clock, the whistle's gone, let's go and have a cup of tea or whatever. Breaks fitted in around work. Some people would say, look, I'm busy now, I'll have a break, but it won't be for, I'm okay with that. Lunch times, as long as the office was manned, I didn't care when anybody went for their lunch. I did care how long it took. You couldn't have a half-day lunch, but lunch, okay. And there was never, right, you've got an hour, but you've got to be back in an hour or 45 minutes or whatever it was. Part of this goes down to trust for me anyway. Trust in the people who worked for me, with me, trusting that they would not take the mick, really, or take advantage. And usually they didn't. Usually they came back. My only concern was people who didn't take breaks. Really, I was more concerned about them than I was the ones who took slightly longer, because some people didn't take breaks. And if you think about what happened in COVID, originally in COVID, when I worked quite a lot with the civil service and talked to them a lot about that day when everyone got sent home, when everyone was told, right, you're working from home now. Some people almost made themselves ill by not taking breaks because they were so concerned that they might be seen to be not doing anything when they weren't in the office, that they didn't take breaks. They felt they had to be there all the time. They forgot that when they went into the office, it sometimes could take a quarter of an hour to get to your desk because you see someone you go and get a cup of tea, you go to the toilet, whatever. They forgot about that when they were working at home. And some people were quite ill. So monochronic and polychronic organization. Of course, speaking about COVID, we're running towards the end of this now, guys. So anyone who's gone, how much longer can he talk for this morning? How would you address the people who, I missed that, it went before I could read it all.
How would you address the people who take advantage of the trust?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was a quiet one-to-one conversation. Actually, it was in COVID terms, or during COVID, it was a phone call, really, or sometimes we'd have a one-to-one video call, but it was just letting people know that I'm concerned that, you know, maybe you're not in your desk as often as you could be, or just want to know, you know, just be aware that you're coming over as if you're not really putting a shift in. I mean, the reason I'm being so vague about it is because it never happened. Look, it probably did happen, but I didn't know about it. There were bound to be people who disappeared one afternoon, or what? Of course, they were bound to be. I didn't know about it, and that also what happened. I do know was that the team became self-policing. So another member of the team would bring it up because they were all pretty good like that. Would point out that, you know, no one else has done that or whatever. So I'm sorry if that was a wishy-washy sort of an answer, but that's what I would do if. But I can't go back on personal experience because it didn't happen. I mean, there's no one here from Cardiff University. I know, well, it doesn't matter now. I've been retired 8 years. I ran the organisation under slightly different rules than the rest of the university. And if they'd ever found out, well, I don't know what would have happened. But the rules were that we would always cover if you had a home emergency, if someone was coming to deliver a fridge or anything like that. Don't tell lies. Don't say I've got a cough or I've got to do, you know, my grandmother's died again or something. Don't do any of that. Say this is what's happening and we'll cover for that. If it's your birthday, you had a day off and we covered. Don't take leave, just have your birthday day. And for any of them who got married, we gave them a week towards their honeymoon and we covered as well. So you didn't have to take time for that. So those kind of things we did, as I said, if the university ever found out, we'd have been at the spout, but as it was, they never did. And I wonder whether that kind of atmosphere that we built and that culture that we built meant that people didn't actually push the boundaries, you know. But I'm sure they did in other organisations, just not mine, sorry. Yeah, so COVID, just talking very quickly about COVID. What it did was we configured the norm for chronemics as a result of COVID. There was never a set time for meetings. It would depend, you know, it would depend on when people were there, because what we said was, look, all right, if we're talking and the dog jumps on your lap or the cat walks across the screen, which happens all the time, by the way, if you're online, people's cats seem to be fascinated. Yeah. No, linking talk and description. So linking. Sorry, can you tell me what that is? Beck's gone again. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, we've actually got a couple. So
Okay.
a lot of what you've described during this webinar links in with emotional intelligence. Excuse me. Some are naturally empathetic. I would consider myself to be. However, you've given some real food for thought in things I will change. So thank you. That was a comment from Rachel. And then there was a question. Sorry. If somebody is presenting poor behaviour at work and needs to have a warning, do you have a structured approach you would recommend for this?
Well, giving a warning, yeah, do it yourself.
Yeah.
Number one, do it yourself. Never ever delegate. Never delegate. Look, one of the great coping mechanisms of conflict for managers is to run away. Awful lot of them disappear when there's conflict. Not you. You deal with it, okay? That's your job. You've got to be good at conflict. You've got to be good at dealing with it. I don't mean you've got to be good at starting it, but you've got to be good at dealing with it. And for a warning meeting, it's one-to-one. It's formally set. It's looking. Your body language has to be absolutely spot on. Okay, it's good eye contact. It's square shoulders. It's looking at someone, and don't prevaricate. Deal with the facts. This is what we're here for. Right up front, this is what we're here for. Okay? This is what this meeting is about. This is what's happened. I need to talk to you about this. And then do it. Don't prevaricate. Look, I know, look, you might feel, oh, I don't like being nasty, or I don't like being grumpy, or I don't like doing this. But that's your job as a manager. It's maybe for some people the most unpleasant part, but that's your job. So be factual, okay? Stick to the facts. This is what it is. Also, have an outcome ready. You've got to know what the end of this warning is going to be like. You've got to know what comes at the end of the warning. And it is, this can't happen again. Okay? Let's assume this is the first time. This is your informal verbal warning. We're going to talk it through. We're going to find out why it happened. And then we're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. And they have to agree at the end of it. They've got to. They can't walk out of the meeting not agreeing. They've got to agree. And if they choose to say, look, I don't accept this, you escalate it. You go, right, we're going to have another one of these meetings. Do you want to bring someone with you? Shall I bring in HR? Whatever. But if you can deal with it yourself, I've always preferred to do that. But it's got to be resolved. They have to understand that what they're doing doesn't fit. Okay, it doesn't fit with you and the rest of the organization. Okay, I hope that's all right. We're running really short of time. Yeah, so if you've got people who are working remotely, it started off with COVID, didn't it? Let's be fair. Suddenly people worked remotely. I know lots of people do, and you leaders may well have to deal with remote teams. Well, okay, do that. And if you need a meeting at a slightly odd time, do that as well. Okay, but make sure that what you do, the times you set are okay with everybody. I'm not advocating this, but there may be someone who, I don't know, so overloaded with family and life when they're working at home that their clock almost shifts 3, 4, 5 hours. Well, look, maybe if that works for them, then you've got to sort of go, well, okay. What I wouldn't recommend is you start having meetings out of hours, because it has too many unpleasant connotations. The big thing you've got to deal with chronically is guilt. When people are working from home, initially they're guilt flying around the place. I feel guilty because I'm not coming into the office. I feel guilty because I wonder whether you think I'm not doing enough. You'll have to deal with that at some time. Well, no, you had to. Now, so many years post-COVID, there's no guilt around working from home now. The only problem is the leaders who go, oh, working from home, the old days, when working from home meant I got someone delivering a fridge. Well, that's not the case anymore. We understand that people work from home and are effective. Okay, and there you go. Any last questions, or anyone want to say anything? Hang on, put that. Refuse to do what? I saw that.
It can be difficult to manage people remotely who you've refused to switch cameras and microphones on, then use mental health reasons for doing so. Do you have any tips for managing that?
Do you know what? I could not agree with you more. I just don't get I'm not putting my camera on. I know some, in the early days, when COVID first came in and we were doing this a lot, there were a lot of people uncomfortable with being on camera. But for most people, that's gone now. And there are all sorts of other reasons. Cameras don't work, all that sort of stuff. That's fine. But if you've got a meeting with you, the cameras really should be coming on. Because you can tell, can you? I've always got this morbid fear that the camera not being on means you're not there. No, don't take that personally. Anyone who has got the camera on. It's just, if I'm doing a session with people, I want them on. Okay, you're right though. It is difficult. No camera, no mic. You wouldn't go into a meeting in work saying, I don't want you to see me, so I'm going to wear a cardboard box on my head, and I'm not speaking either. Would you? It would be unacceptable. So it's unacceptable in this as well. Okay, any others? Any other? Thank you for all who said thanks. I've enjoyed this one. It's my topic. I love this.
I've popped the feedback form in the chat, but and also just to mention that we've got another sort of kind of follow-on webinar on the 5th of December. So the inevitability of workplace conflict and how it can be resolved. So yeah, that was it from me. Are there any other questions for Barry? It looks like everybody's just saying lovely positive things, Barry.
No, yeah, it always takes me by surprise. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to come to this, and maybe I'll see you in December. Okay. Beck wants me to dress up as an elf in December. I'm not doing that. I've got some element of self-composure. Come on.
I think you should.
We can wear a Swansea kit.
That would be a difficult conversation, Barry, wouldn't it?
Slightly, yeah.
With elf ears.
Rob, if you're still here, will you stay on?
Sure.
Yeah, will you stay on, Rob?
Yes, of course.
Thank you, Barry. Much
Thanks,
appreciated.
everyone.
Thank you.
Now,
Bye.
bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you all so
Bye
much.
now.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye. Bye. I've never seen so many people. Oh, gosh.